Welcome back to the Change Physician Podcast. I am Dr. Melissa Cady, joined by my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and today we have a lovely guest from Maryland, Dr. Dianah Lake, or also known as Dr. Di, and she is an emergency physician who has all sorts of other things that she does that I'm excited to share, especially in the world of fitness and some things we'll find out about women's health. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Melissa and Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we always start from the beginning, pre-med. What was it that made you interested in going into medicine in the first place?
That's a great question. So going into medicine, I remember being 14. I actually grew up in Liberia, West Africa. So I remember I was going to be moving to the United States for college. And we were talking about it. I was in the 11th grade. I finished high school early. So my mom asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I wanted to travel the world.
Awesome.
She's like, so how are you going to make that happen? And I said, I'm going to be a flight attendant. And she said, well, they just kind of take people there. They don't stay. And I said, oh, well, I need to find something else then. That's not going to work. And so we just had a chat and she said, well, you're really good at the sciences and math. So what do you think of being a doctor? I wanted to be a nurse, but then I got pregnant with you and I never completed my nursing career or my nursing education. So I think it would be great for you to do this. She kind of like shoves me to it. And I was like, do I get to be my own boss? Of course, this is at 14.
Right.
And so she said, you can be, or you can work for a hospital. And I said, I think I like that. I like the people aspect. I like helping people. I knew I wanted to work with the public. And I like the idea of autonomy, which of course we found in medicine isn't always there. But at the time I thought it was anyway. So that was really what sort of was the impetus for me deciding on medicine. It was, I wanted to have freedom. I wanted to be able to help people, but have the means to see the world. I know that's kind of crazy, but
No,
that's it.
I think that's, I feel like I resonate with that. And I know quite a few of us do. Kevin, look like you had a question.
No questions. Okay. I was just enjoying it because you kind of hit all that, everything is, how are you going to do it? And I was really laughing about how your mother had framed that choice. As a parent myself, I'm like, that you have a brilliant mom. But she didn't say, you're going to do this. She says, she just kind of pushed it out there and planted some, why don't you consider this? Like, actually, as a parent, you're like, I want you to do this. But you did it in such a nice way where you don't get that reaction of, I'm not going to do that, Mom. So,
yes. She was like, it would just be something that I kind of wanted to do, but then you came and then I didn't do it. So now you get a chance.
So
awesome. Yeah. So you end up coming to the US, you start this whole journey, just getting into medical school. What was kind of that path like, or some realizations, or maybe you had this idealistic view and you got it, shattered and had some other thoughts about things?
Well, it's funny because I actually wanted to do OBGYN. Ended up in emergency medicine, but I went to medical school in New Jersey, and I remember we were so close to New York. We were about 10 minutes from the Lincoln Tunnel, from New York. And so I was in the city a lot. I did all this women's health stuff. I was at Planned Parenthood every summer, like poster child. And then third year came, I did my OB rotation, and apologies to the OBs, but I did not like it. I was like, this is incongruent with how I want to live my life. Like, the timing of the surgeries and the lifestyle and the perpetual feeling of being a resident, just constantly being in the hospital on call, that whole dynamic was so anti-Dianah. I was just like, no, I cannot do this. And so that was a big shocker for me, because all along, all through college, even in college, I was doing women's health stuff, like volunteering at the hospital, doing all of that. And then third year, everything just flipped for me, and I was like, okay, this cannot be it. I'm not doing this. It was so good to have that experience to see what it would look like, to have the clinical rotation for 2 months and see how the doctors doing it lived and how happy or not happy they were, and many were not happy, and I was like, do I really want to do this? And I mean, it's very stressful. Not to say ER isn't stressful, but then I was like, I need to pivot to something else. And then I remember cardiac, what do you call it? I did 2 weeks of anesthesiology with, the cardiac thoracic surgeons, and I did 2 weeks to open heart surgery. And I thought that was fun. I was like, wow. So seeing all these different things. And then I get to my 1 month of ER, and within the 1 month you get to see, I was in the Bronx, and it was like, 1 month of ER, you get to see trauma, you get to see stroke, you get to see women's health, you get to see pediatrics, you get to see, like all these different things. And that was so in line with my personality. I'm a variety person. I was like, this is it. And you only do 14 shifts a month. You don't have a beeper. You literally show up, you work, and you leave, and nobody ever calls you. I was like, yes. That's it. That's the one I want.
Yeah, like for someone that likes freedom, autonomy, and wants to travel, like it opens up those windows of opportunity to.
Oh my gosh, yes. I was like, this is it. I get to dabble in a lot of little things, and still have the time to actually have a joyful life. And do things that really make me happy. And so so that's how I ended up kind of changing in med school to end up doing ER instead of OBGYN.
So how was the ER, the whole emergency residency? How did that go?
It was challenging, but it was, I did it in the Bronx at Jacobi Medical Center, Jacobi and Montefiore. And Montefiore has a huge population, over 100,000 visits per year. So it's a very busy place. You see everything possible under the earth, under the sun. And it really prepared me, for working anywhere. I mean, I'm so glad I did my residency there, because when I started doing locums, I worked in Maine in like this very rural place, where you were a single doc, single coverage, and you had to do, there wasn't a lot of backup. There's no surgical team coming down, to help you in a trauma. You're it. Yeah. And so doing emergency medicine there was great. I think it was the best training I could have asked for, really, for residency. So it was tough, but I enjoyed it, and it prepared me for what I'm doing now.
So let's kind of build off of that then. So you did your emergency medicine residency, and then you entered into practice. Now you mentioned locums, but you didn't go straight into locums, or did you join like
No, I did 9 years working for various groups. So I had worked for a group, actually when I worked in New Jersey, right out of residency, I finished 2007. So right out of residency, I actually took a position with a fabulous group in New Jersey at, a hospital in Patterson at St. Joe's. And I was married at the time. And then literally that first year we moved to Virginia. So within about 2 years of me starting my practice, I moved to 3 states. Well, I moved 2 states, from New Jersey to Virginia to Maryland. So it was a lot of changes going on. And so basically for those first 9 years of my career as an attending, I worked for either a group or directly for a hospital as an ER doc. And then in 2016, switched over to doing locums as an independent contractor.
So can we explore that transition a little bit? Because usually there's a reason that somebody will move into a locums practice as compared to staying with the group. And what was happening in your life at that time, and what brought you into that transition?
So at that time, I decided I wanted to start a company. I wanted to do something, that directly worked with women. So I still had this women's health thing going, And the background. I wanted to do something that I was working with women, not necessarily in the, the space of clinical medicine, but I knew that I wanted to still do something with women, that had to do with health and wellness. And so I launched my fitness company. And when I launched my fitness company, the hospital I was working for at the time basically said that I couldn't really run my fitness company and be a full-time ER doc there because there was a conflict of interest.
Oh my God.
Because you're keeping too much fitness in the ER.
Craziest thing I've ever heard.
They said, well, I remembered my ER director coming to me and saying that, we hear you. I mean, some of them were friends on my Facebook page. So they saw the things I was doing leading up to starting the company. And he said, we hear that you were doing this thing, and starting this company that is kind of, in a disagreement with your contract. And so I said, but I'm not going to be treating patients. I'm doing fitness. I'm doing, wellness. I'm doing exercise, for God's sakes, And basically, I was told it's still considered wellness, quote unquote, and that's part of health and wellness. And so it's a non-compete. And I said, well, I want to do this. So basically, I decided to launch forward with the business and find another way to continue working as an emergency medicine physician. I mean, at first I was scared out of my mind because I'd always worked for a group. My mom was like losing it. She was like, what if you don't find a job? What if, all these what ifs? I'm like, Mom, it's gonna be okay, And so I just, reached out I had already been getting, these emails that we all get that the locums companies are kind of testing the waters to see if you're interested. So I just went into my emails and just pulled up some resources of people who had reached out to me before, who I, of course, never responded to. But now I was like, hey, I'm interested. How does this work? And I talked to a few people, and it's funny because I'm still working with those original people, now. Like, it's been an ongoing relationship with, several of them where I'm still doing work with them. Even some of them have moved on to different locums companies and brought me along. So it's worked out, way better than I even anticipated. It's worked out really well.
And I think it's important to highlight that because you kind of hit a number of really key topics what we face as physicians all the time. There's these contracts and somebody will pull up some weird paragraph somewhere and make up nonsense like this. Yes. Like, honest to God, you really think that you opening a fitness company is going to have a significant impact on your ER visits? I mean, that'd be great if it did, but I mean, and it's just crazy because we know that we see this in healthcare and hospitals and health systems, just almost doing these punitive contract things rather than saying, hey, how can I work with you to support you and make it a better environment? So that's my little rant there.
Yes.
But the second part is then physicians get scared by that. Or they think, what if it happens? And they start doing what your mom did. I'm never going to find a job. So can you just, like, you took an active step. You started emailing those locum companies, but how long did it take you to find that alternative? I mean, was it a taxing process that took you 6 months and you're almost on the bankruptcy at the end of it? Or was it a relatively quick switch and pretty easy transition for you?
That's a great question. And before I answer the question, there was another thing that was really, kind of throwing the fear in there as well. I had signed up when I joined the company. I had gotten a forgivable loan, which was like a retention loan, which is another thing that probably, you've experienced or maybe not, but there was a loan given to me for $75,000 that if I stayed for 7 years, I wouldn't have to pay it back. So that got thrown in my face, like, so you're going to have to pay that money back.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, then I'll pay the money back. But, I mean, it's what it is. I really want to do this. So if it means I have to pay the money back, they had this thing, if you had been there 5 years, they would prorate the other 2 years, you would just pay back the other 2 years. But I was there 3.5 years, so I had to end up paying the whole thing back, which I did in 2 years. So I paid it back, the whole thing, in 2 years, and it was done. But I just wanted to add that in too, because that was a kind of, just instilling that fear that if you do this, then you have to pay this money. And I was like, okay, then I guess I have to pay the money, But yeah, so that was another, thing that was there kind of staring me in the face when I was making this decision is, do I really want to have to pay this money back? But it's the price you pay if you want your independence and all these things we're talking about. So basically, when I decided, I had, I think, 3 months. I can't remember how much time they give you to kind of, I had to give notice, right? I had to give notice that I was going to be leaving. And basically in that time, while I was doing my transition, I started reaching out to the locums companies. The biggest thing that was the slowest part for me was credentialing into a new system. Mm-hmm. So credentialing can be long and taxing. So I actually went with Maine because Maine took like 3 weeks. It was really quick. I'm not sure if it's still the same way now. It was when I started in 2016 with them, but I got a call from one of the locums people I had reached out to, and I said, look, I'm going to be leaving my company in a couple of months, and I want to kind of just move right into something else. And she said, well, from my experience, the quickest place to go would be Maine. So I said, okay. So we went ahead and got my Maine license. Literally less than 3 weeks, I had a license in Maine. And they just really pushed me through because the facility really needed to have someone right away. And at that time, they were looking for someone to do a stretch of nights. And there was a specific week, I can't remember. It was like in the middle of winter. I got there, it was -9 degrees. I was, oh my God. But it was like in the middle of winter, and I guess someone was moving, like one of their partners or somebody was moving, and they had this immediate need to fill the spot. So everything aligned for me. And I was able to move right into another gig in Holton, Maine, which is a very small town in Maine. And I worked there for like 1.5 years.
Wow.
And it wasn't even just a short, stint. It was ongoing.
Wow.
And so, so that's how I started. And then once I got that gig and I was doing that, it was very interesting because at this point I'm now divorced and I have my boys every other week. So I would travel. Wow. Talk about the changed position, huh? I mean, this was not, for the weak hearts, So I would travel there. I would do 5 days, and then I would fly back in time to have 1 day off before my boys got home, And so I was doing this kind of working there half the month, living here half the month. And I made it work for a little while, and then I got another contract that was local. So then, I had a little bit more flexibility with my schedule. But until that second contract, I got to a point that I have 4 contracts running at the same time, and I would just pick and choose where I wanted to go. But there was a little moment there where, my schedule was crazy. I was traveling all over the place, and I wanted to be home and present for my kids. So during those weeks, I would just be home. And, I made less money then because I was only working 10 shifts a month. I would do 5 in Maine and then be off a week with the kids, like that. Right. But it worked enough to, cover my expenses and things like that until I was able to get a local contract.
Yeah.
And while you're building another business, because you're building your fitness business on the side that whole time.
So then I'm doing that, and that's all online. It's always been online from day one. So now that there's so much fitness online going on, I'm like, oh, I've been doing that, for, a number of years now. And so I'm just glad all of that. People are really catching on to the online fitness thing now. So that's great. Yeah.
So I'm curious, as far as trying to ramp that business, some of the, I'm assuming, you're trying to juggle being a single mom,
Yes.
your children, I mean, what are some of these challenges that you've had along the way trying to, build this online business, or some realizations that you had along the way?
So having a team is a really important piece. My guy that I use for my IT stuff, he's actually my cousin. I've known him his whole life. I'm older than him, so I can say that. And so actually, when I moved here from Liberia for college, I lived in his mother's house for a year when I went to my senior year of high school. I did 1 year of high school here before I started at Rutgers for undergrad. So I literally have watched him grow. He was like 3, I don't know, or whatever at that time, or maybe 6. So I've known him his whole life. And so he's my IT guy. He does all of, like, anything with my business that has to do with launching something new, or, creating like an email sequence, or anything to do with the IT social media aspect of my business. I trusted him to help me with that. And it was a huge, huge, benefit, because it wasn't a situation where I was working with someone I didn't know. I could call him at midnight and be like, hey, B, we know this is not working. I need you to look at this right now. And it just really helped having someone who is family, but also really good at what he does. He's like a perfectionist, and I'm not. And so I trust him to do a lot of the stuff that I would just be like, look, I did this. This is what I need, give him high level. And then he would go into the details of it. And so that really helped. And then getting a VA, a virtual assistant, someone else to do the social media piece of managing content. So team building was something that I realized I had to have, because I just couldn't do it all. I couldn't keep myself healthy, take care of my kids, especially I've had children with special needs, both of my boys. So with all of the stuff that comes with that, doing teacher parent conferences and extra meetings with the doctors and therapy, and it's just a lot, so I had to start delegating. I'm the queen of delegation. I delegated my cooking, I delegated housekeeping, I delegated a lot. Nice. So that's, those are some of the things that I realized building the business that had to happen in order for me to be that face of the business and be able to do the client one-on-one stuff. Everything else around me had to be delegated to people that I trusted to do it, and I formed relationships with people. Like the person that cleans my house has been cleaning my house for 8 years, and I just formed these relationships with people that just stuck. And so I was like, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about this. I can focus on the revenue generating activities. And so that really helped a lot.
So you've created a village of sorts.
Yes, totally.
Well, and that's not easy, I think, for a lot of physicians to do, right? Yeah. Everybody's a control freak. Well, not everybody, but most of us are. And so I want to kind of highlight that as you made this active choice to transition into something that you really wanted to do, were confronted by a group with these petty little nonsense things. But it really sounds like the only way that you could really balance this kind of crazy changed physician life was because you were willing to actually say, you know what, I'm going to delegate. I'm going to identify people who can help me with this. And I applaud you on that, because I know it can be very difficult for physicians to feel like they're giving up control, but in fact, actually gaining more control by losing those things that don't require their direct attention.
Absolutely. It just frees you up. And I'm all about that freedom. The freedom thing for me is I want time freedom. I want financial freedom. Actually, I'm supposed to be getting ready to go to Bali right now, but coronavirus has other plans. I was there last year this time, and I was like, oh, but yeah. So the autonomy and freedom thing for me is like, is healthy living, is self-care, is making sure I'm present for my children. Because that was another thing for me. I felt like I went from working 18 shifts a month at my old job to doing like 12 and making more. Look at that.
Wow. Now, you saying that making more in the sense of what you're doing in addition to emergency medicine?
No, I mean making more working 12 shifts a month than I was making working 18 shifts a month as an ER doc.
Being independent.
Because the rates for locums is just better.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking $70, $80 more per hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, why didn't I do this before? You know?
And that's another thing though, is, you know, physicians, we have a tendency to be very conservative. And someone would say, well, if I have a contract with the group, I'm safe. And I think we'll expose that. You are not safe, but it's just interesting because you're doing some arbitrage there where you're leveraging that locums opportunity in such a way that now you're working less, but making more, plus building a business. So beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. No,
it's something that we are not taught in medical school, which really kind of pisses me off that, you know, in medical school, no one tells you about business. You're not taught how to run your business as a physician. I would have started locums many years earlier, like if it was something that was, you know, talked about more freely in the medical, you know, the medical school curriculum. Like, hey, you know, when you come out, you don't necessarily have to just own a private practice and have a brick and mortar, and, you know, you could consult for a television show. You could, you know, there's so many other things we can do as physicians. And I just started learning more about it when I was in a crunch. Like, you know, when I needed to pivot and do something different, I was like, shoot, like, what am I gonna do? But it shouldn't be that way. I feel like all of these opportunities should be, you know, just available to us. Maybe fourth year, make it an elective or something, you know, where you tell the medical student, look, when you come out, you can be an attending in a hospital, you can run your own practice, you could be on a boat somewhere, you know, being a medical doctor for cruises. I mean, cruise right now is not a good idea, but I'm just saying, you know, you could do anything with this degree. Seriously, the opportunities are so vast. And a lot of us are in this small mindset of, ooh, well, I better sit here and, you know, do what I'm told. And, you know, like you just follow this sort of path and everyone just feels like you just got to do this one thing when it's so not true.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
No, I love it. And, you know, you talk about freedom, financial freedom, and all these things. And you just made me think of this sense of just this mental or mind freedom. There's something you've ventured into that a lot of us, unfortunately, I think learn, I don't want to say the hard way, but when we have to pivot, and it makes you expand your mind into these other possibilities. And it almost, it's like you can never go back. And, you know, once you've seen it and you recognize it, like I don't know about you, but do you feel this idea almost like a nauseating, constrictive feeling if you're to like be an employee again?
Yes. Yeah, it's not happening.
As a friend of mine says, I want to be unemployable.
Listen, if I have to do telemedicine on my own, you know, I mean, it's just the free, and I don't want to glamorize it, you know, and say, oh, this is just fantastic, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, right? You know, you have to put in the upfront, you know, work to see the dividends on the other end. So I'm not saying this is just a walk in the park, because it's not. Credentialing is a pain in the butt. You know, I remember I have 7 licenses right now for my locums practice. And I remember going through those and just being like, oh my God, if these people don't, you know, get this together, you know, and they're asking you for your USMLE scores. I don't know where that is. You know, you got to dig up all this stuff. So I'm not saying, you know, that it's just going to be easy peasy, you know, like you're just going to walk right through. But if you're willing to do what it takes to make that transition, the other side is just, it's beautiful. It's what you want. It's your dream life. You know, you're serving people, you're doing the things you love to do and the things you're passionate about. and it's profitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a win-win. And no one's on your neck about just minutia and nonsense, you know. And
I
I'm
think
just saying, you've spent like 20 something years of your life educating yourself, preparing for this thing you do, and then someone's like, you know, like a little puppeteer on the top, you know, telling you this and that and the third. And I'm like, look, listen, you know, it just doesn't work for me anymore. So that mentality of being, you know, an employee is I'm so far removed from it.
Yeah, I have to agree. I feel the same way. I'm curious about what, you know, now that you've been launching your own business and you're obviously a connector and love this kind of building community and inspiring people. What kind of things are you into right now that you are putting out there to help people?
Oh, that's a great question. So I have several things I'm doing right now. The main one being putting together a 12-week, well, it's already put together, a 12-week fitness transformation program for women only. And men reach out to me to help them train too. I'm like, I only work with women. Yeah, but I'm putting together, I have a 12-week weight loss fitness transformation program, coaching program that I put together that will be launching on August 3rd. So I'm actually doing interviews for people. I did 2 today of women who are interested in joining the coaching program to see if it's a good fit. And basically in the coaching program, I'm teaching them about mindset. Some of the stuff we're talking about here, women have that too when it comes to their bodies. You know, like we have all kinds of thoughts about things we can't do. Or I can never lose these 30 pounds. Yes, you can. You know, and so we go into all of that, all the mindset stuff, and I just really help women create the body they absolutely love. Get them having a great relationship with food, so that is, you know, eating nutritious, healthy meals that are actually fueling and nourishing their body and not starving on some, you know, fad diet or something, and just giving them the empowerment they need to create the lifestyle that they want. So that is my signature program, and I call it Your Best Body Ever. Fitness transformation. So that's launching August 3rd. And I also have another program that I'm working with menopausal women on. And that one is some of my fitness clients actually do it as well, but women who are going through menopause and having all of these menopausal symptoms that are driving them nuts. Mm-hmm. I basically help them with hormone replenishment, bioidentical hormones replenishment, to get their lives back on track so that, you know, those symptoms go away and they can focus on the things that they really want to focus on in their lives. And so that's it. And I have one more, which is just a workout platform that I've created for people who love working out with me. And I have a following in my fitness accountability group. They love doing live workouts with me. So I created something for us to be able to do weekly workouts in there. And it's a membership portal, and it's called Fit Boss Lifestyle. So nice. That's going to be launching in a couple of weeks. And so, yeah, so people who want to get, you know, involved with any of this, they can reach out to me, and I'll get them plugged in.
Nice. So just to clarify, what got you so interested in fitness? What was the thing?
The thing. Oh my gosh. The thing was my divorce. So I got into fitness because there was one day back in 2012. I remember all my turning points. Back in 2012, I was separated, going through my divorce, and one of my girlfriends I'm in a mom group with saw that this was just not me being so down, and she said, let's go for a run. I had never run a day in my life. Wow. And I was like, girl, I do not run. Unless a tiger is behind me, I do not run. She was like, look, it'll help you kind of, you know, just get in a different space, a different energy. And so we went for a run, and she was like, we can walk and then run and then walk and then run. And I didn't even need that. I didn't even know I could run. Nice. We went out there and I did 2 miles, and I was like, oh my God, that feels amazing. I was like, when do we go again?
Now, how did you feel a few days later?
Actually, I felt fine. I
Oh,
guess
good.
maybe I always had this runner thing in me and just didn't know it. And so
Nice.
that became my therapy going through separation because I just really needed an outlet
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have one at the time. And oh my gosh, it changed. I mean, of course, I was still going through a divorce, but it just really, stress wise, it just really helped me have a way to release stress. And then I started looking at, everything else, really, looking at everything else in my life. And another turning point was when I lost my dad. My dad had diabetes, and he was a dialysis patient, and he ended up getting a kidney transplant. And the basically complications of the transplant, he had this massive intestinal bleed, and he passed away. So that was around, kind of about a year after that. So looking at the whole thing, I was just like, okay, how do I create a life for myself so I don't get diabetes?
Mm-hmm.
Because my dad had it, and I want to make sure I set up an example for myself and my kids. And so I really started with the, holistic lifestyle and, all of the organic, type of stuff that I do now, non-GMOs for foods in the house, and all of that really came from those two things, plus my son as well. I have a son on the autism spectrum. And I saw that with the literature, really giving them non-GMO foods really helped with their their neurologic development. So I really all these things all just happened within like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in that 2-year span, I really had so many different things happening that really led me to changing my lifestyle, getting more committed to fitness, changing the way I eat, and all of that. And I mean, it's all been, very, very beneficial. And I mean, I'm just happy that I took those negative events and just really turned it into something life, transforming.
Yeah.
And so that's what brought me here, and I'm not going back.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got good energy, just even looking at your Facebook posts and just the enthusiasm and the energy and the smiles. I mean, you can tell you're passionate about what you're doing. So that's awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to have so many significant traumas within a short time period, because if I'm remembering correctly, you said the divorce was in 2012, and then from the time sounds like your father passed in 2013, son born in that time period, and then you started your business and also split and started doing those locums choices in 2014. So that's a compressed time period there to go through a whole lot. But I just applaud how you took control of your life, made some active choices, and really designed and crafted a life that it's pretty obvious that you love and is
I do love
doing
it.
the things that you want out of it.
And it's, it was kind of like one thing and then another thing and then another thing. They were a little spaced out, but it was in a short period of time. And a lot of people would crumble, because they're like, oh my God, yet another thing coming,
Yeah.
And it was tough. I won't make it seem like, I just kind of smoothed my way through. It really wasn't. There were a lot of ups and downs, and therapy. Oh my gosh, therapy helps. Therapy helps. I did some amazing emotional intelligence work, with a company out in Philadelphia. So I had a lot of help. And like you mentioned before, Kevin, I knew when I needed help, and I needed to go out and seek the support I needed, or when I needed to, hand something off to someone. And so that was helpful as well, to be able to, have that sense of when I needed to reach out to people for help, and when I could do it on my own.
It's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much of your time here. I think we could talk to you for another hour at least. Love your energy, just like Melissa was saying. But I just, is there a certain place that you would direct people if they were interested in learning more about you or would like to contact you? And maybe they're struggling themselves, going through some issues and are unsure where they're going to go with practice. Where would you like them to contact you?
Yes. So my website and my Facebook page, my public Facebook page, are Dr. Di Fit Life. So that's DRDIFITLIFE.com. So Dr. Di Fit Life on Facebook. Actually, it's Dr. Di Fit Life everywhere, on Twitter,
Nice.
on Instagram. It's Dr. Di Fit Life on everything. So the website is the same name, Dr. Di Fit Life.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Di, so much for being on the show for us today. And for everybody else out there, thank you for joining the changephysician.com, and we will see you very soon. Take care.
Thanks for having me.